Native L-mount lenses are great, but they aren't cheap. Today we're testing 6-budget Canon EF and EF-S lenses on Panasonic S5II using the Sigma MC21 adapter. Welcome to Behind the Floppy Flag. We'll review 6 APS-C and full-frame lenses to see if they're worth buying or using today. I've ranked them from worst to best based on how useful they actually are for the L-mount system. Apart from that, I include a DxOMark page of each lens, as well as approximate used prices from B&H. Let's dive in. Number 6. Canon EF-S 55-250 IS version 2. This lens features an incredibly dated micromotor AF system that is loud, slow, and highly unreliable when adapted to L-mount. In my experience, Canon's STM lenses adapt beautifully to Panasonic bodies, but this older micro AF version is just frustrating to use. Beyond the poor autofocus, the build quality is entirely plastic, including the lens mount. The barrel extends significantly when zooming and focusing, and the front element rotates. It has zero weather sealing, so keep it away from dust and moisture. While it's the cheapest entry point into wildlife and telephoto photography, its current used price is around $150 at B&H is too steep for what you get. Unreliable AF, heavy vignetting, and chromatic aberrations. It's highly imperfect, which is why it takes the last spot. At number 5, we have Canon 18-200 IS. This is another older, all-in-one travel zoom. On the plus side, it features a metal lens mount and is built a bit sturdier than the previous one until you zoom all the way in, where it gets a bit wobbly. Optically, it's far from stellar. DxOMark gives it an overall score of 11, the lowest in today's video, with only 5 megapixels of perceived sharpness. It was designed as a convenient single-lens solution for casual travel on cameras like the 500D back in the day. Unfortunately, it uses the same loud, squeaking and slow micromotor AF system as the previous lens. And like the previous, it doesn't allow for manual focus override. The AF mechanism stays engaged even if you push AF lock on camera. Forcing the ring could damage the internal gears, so is not advised. The biggest deal breaker for me though was image stabilization. This was the only lens in the test that suffered from severe stabilization glitches, causing the footage to jerk uncontrollably. The only fix was restarting the camera, after which the IS would function normally for a while. Since it's an APS-C lens, it forces your full-frame Lumix into crop mode. You can still shoot crop 4K videos or pictures in APS-C mode, but due to the poor sharpness and stabilization issues, I can't recommend it. Next up is our first full-frame option, the 24-105 STM. Unlike the previous two, this lens features a more modern STM motor that is fast, silent and highly reliable. While the adapted AF performance isn't quite as snappy as it would be on native Canon DSLRs, it locks onto subjects securely and I experienced zero stabilization issues as well. The 24-105 focal range is incredibly versatile, a perfect sweet spot for a single lens setup. The build quality is decent, featuring a metal mount and nice rubberized rings, although it lacks weather sealing. And overall image quality, even though much better than in the previous two lenses, leaves much to be desired, especially for critical photography work. It's currently tough to recommend buying this lens because of bizarre used market pricing. On B&H, this STM version costs more than a vastly superior constant aperture Canon 24-105 f4L USM. If you already own the STM version, it's okay, a functional lens to adapt. But if you're buying fresh, look elsewhere. Sitting right in the middle is the 10-18mm STM. It's an incredibly affordable ultra-wide lens. It's not the sharpest glass out there, DxOMark rates it at 7 perceived megapixels and it has noticeable vignetting, but the autofocus works perfectly good across all modes. If your L-mount camera applies a crop when shooting 4K, like the S5II in 50 and 60p modes, having a lens this wide is fantastic. It gives you an equivalent focal length of roughly 15-16mm, giving you fun and creative ultra-wide perspectives. Interestingly, this lens covers a full-frame sensor from about 12-18mm. Unfortunately, Panasonic cameras don't allow you to manually override crop mode for APS-C lenses like Sony cameras do. The lens communicates its crop status via the adapter and you're locked in. You can trick the camera by slightly twisting the lens to break the electronic contact, but because this is a focus-by-wire STM lens, losing electronic connection means you completely lose the ability to focus. I personally would love Panasonic to allow switching full-frame and APS-C modes manually regardless of the lens used. At around $170 used, it's a neat lens for casual vlogging or creative shots, but the heavy corner shading and lower resolution make it a no-go for professional work like real estate. The second place of my weird rating goes to the nifty 50mm 1.4 USM. Released back in 1993, this 30-year-old design is practically vintage now. Optically, it produces a beautifully soft, pleasing image with creamy background bokeh. If you love complete background separation for portrait, this lens delivers. I personally am not a huge fan of this kind of photography and prefer to place my subjects into at least some context and not the blurry vacuum. The build quality feels solid and premium. Thanks to the USM motor, you get full-time manual focus override. The autofocus is relatively quick, but manual focusing is a bit of a letdown. The ring feels a bit jerky and lacks the dampening needed for smooth, cinematic focus pulls. There is a distinct vintage aesthetic to the footage that modern clinical photography lenses just can't provide, and it easily earns its spot as number 2. And I'm not selling it, even though I have and use Panasonic 50mm 1.8. This one still has a place in my lens cabinet. Finally, the number 1 spot goes to the newer STM version of the 55-250. This lens is a massive upgrade over the version 2 we started with. It features redesigned optics and a modern STM motor. Unlike its predecessor, this lens is sharp enough to deliver crisper, high-quality footage with less chromatic aberrations. DxOMark gives it a score of 13 with 7 megapixels of perceived sharpness, which is highly impressive for a budget telephoto lens. The autofocus adapts beautifully to the L-mount, making it reliable enough for casual wildlife, birding or event videography. Because it forces crop mode, you get a full-frame equivalent reach of nearly 400mm. Size-wise, it's tiny and lightweight. Here's a comparison to Panasonic 50-1.8 Prime. It won't weigh down your camera bag. While it retails for around $300 used on B&H, you can often find them on second-hand market for closer to $100 to $150, which was my case. At that price, it's an absolute steal. To get this kind of reach natively on Panasonic, you'd need the 70-300 lens, which costs around $1,000. For a fraction of the price, this adapted STM zoom is an incredible value and the only lens from this list that stays in my bag permanently, particularly for 4K 50p videos with longer reach. One thing I'd like to mention in the end is that I have used adapted Canon EF lenses on Sony with Metabones adapter, on Fujifilm with a Fringer adapter, and now on Lumix with the Sigma MC21. Out of all those systems, L-mount delivers the most native-like experience. Autofocus is reliable, performance is consistent, and the lenses behave almost as if they were designed for the system. In my opinion, that's one of L-mount's biggest and often overlooked strengths. That wraps up this video. What EF lenses are you using with your Lumix cameras? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching Behind the Floppy Flag, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!